And we are just waiting while I prepare to live stream for us. And there we go. Here we are. This meeting is being live streamed. Welcome everybody in the hearth space. Here we are. I am here with the lovely Amanda Narin. Thank you so much, Amanda, for coming and agreeing to do this in conversation with session with me. We're going to be talking all things runic. We're going to be talking about the wonderful work that you're doing and the path that you have taken up until this point. And I've got the question, and I know that other people are already going to be watching this live and enjoying the live with us. So anybody has any further questions, you can post them in the hearth space and I will endeavour to pass them on to Amanda. So I met Amanda during the first awakening that I did back in 2020. 2020 it was. And I was just blown away, as I think everyone in the cohort was, by Amanda, because the depth of your relationship with the runes as it built, and you're so generous in your sharing, so everybody in the group got to benefit from this really considered, intensive, intellectual and intuitive approach that you brought to your runes, that you then shared and everyone got to read it. It was wonderful. And then you went on and you've done mastery with me, and you're in your second year of mastery with me now. And you just launched your course, Runic Anatomy, which is on your part of your website, so plant essences, plant healing work, which we're going to be talking about a bit more. And I have had the privilege of looking at, I haven't finished looking at it yet, but of starting to work through the Runic Anatomy course, and it is just fabulous. It's so, again, it's just the approach that, the approach that I knew would be the case because it was you, of, again, an understanding of an intuitive, felt, embodied, soulful approach, accompanied by this precision and this very sort of a scientific approach, which I absolutely love. So I'm really thrilled to be here to share my joy of working with you, with others in the hearth space here. So I would love to hear, I've given you in my words my impressions of working with you, but I would love to hear a little bit more about your journey with, how did you discover the runes? How did you first meet them?
First of all, thank you for having me. I'm just thrilled to be here and thrilled to be in just the group. Since I discovered this group, it's been just transformative for my life. And you never know where you're going to end up. A few years ago, I hadn't even heard of the runes. I've been in metaphysics and esoteric studies. I've been studying things for like 30 years. And it wasn't until I think maybe 2018 that I randomly found this YouTube channel for this woman. Her name is Amanda also, and her YouTube channel isn't up active anymore, but it was called Rune Scopes. It was a combination of runes and tarot readings. And I was like, what is this? And she did this one reading where for the month or for the week she was doing it for, I remember her saying, well, this isn't so bad because Fehu is here. I'm like, what does that mean? I have no idea what she's talking about. And I remember hearing the intention that I want to know about this. I want to know about the runes. And it's like the universe heard that. I started looking at some websites. I found this one website that I signed up for a mailing list. And then because I wasn't really grounded back then fully, I had a lot of other stuff going on. I let it go. And maybe it was even 2019, but at the beginning of lockdown, I suddenly got an email from this one website I signed up for, and this person was silent for a long time. And suddenly, I was like, "Oh, the runes are here." I'm like, and so I started doing research, and I got the idea. I've been into flower essences. They are a huge part of my life, and I heard the idea. Well, maybe I could figure out how to study them, because I was a little overwhelmed. How are you going to learn about these 24 symbols and really understand them. And I was like, well, maybe I could study and pair them up with flower essences to figure out what like Fehu means and what essences would correlate with that. So I started, that was a good motivation for me to study them, because I was really into flower essences. And this is before I was really into runes. And so I started studying them, and it was early June 2020, and I was teaching a class on flower essences, an online class because of the pandemic. And after this class one night, I was waiting for the class to download. I had uploaded on the school server. And while I was doing that, because it took a while, I started looking at the internet for some more rune stuff. And I found your website. And I was like, oh, what is this? And so I got really excited. So I signed up for your website. And like a week later, you put out your awakening. And from then I was like, I got to do this. I heard this voice. I got to learn about them. I have no idea why I want to do this, because it's not my tradition. I've never heard of the Northern. I wasn't familiar with the Northern tradition. And but I feel like the runes have been calling for several years. Several years ago, maybe it was like 2015 or so, I met this a friend's nephew, and he said his name was Tyr. And I was like, who names their kid Tear? And I didn't say that to him. And then I was like, Tyr, that's an interesting name. And I said, how do you spell that? And he was like, Tyr. And he was like, what? And he's like, after the god. I'm like, and it intrigued me, but not enough to look at it. And after lockdown started, I was hanging outside my place a lot, which I didn't do before, but you have to find things to do when you can't leave your house, right? And so I was looking outside, looking at the birds and the squirrels, and this is after the runes came back, and I started like looking at them before I found your website. And my former building has had a no dog policy whatsoever for the 16 years I lived there. And it's this old Victorian, and I looked down the side of it one day and saw this huge dog staring at me, scared the living daylights out of me because it looked like a wolf. And it turns out somebody who had just moved in, he got the permission to get a dog, not just a little dog. It was this huge wolf dog. And because the dog started coming towards me, so the owner had come out, and he was like, stop. And then we were talking, and the dog's name was Odin, and had one blue eye, one like dark eye. And I was like, Odin. He goes, yeah, after the god, because he only has one eye. I'm like, oh, okay. And I was like, no, I don't know, but what are you talking about? And then I discovered when I did the awakening, I was like, oh, they've been around. They've been like, planting the seeds, but obviously years ago, I wasn't ready the first few times. But after I taught my essence class that night and found yours, I before I started going on the internet, I felt like I completed something. When I first started teaching, I was very nervous about getting in front of people. I'm still not necessarily my favorite thing to do, because I really don't love attention on me. I don't mind attention on my work, but on me. But I felt I gave a really good class, and I had upped my game from when I started several years ago. And I was like, okay, I have this idea that I say what Odin gives us a spiritual to-do list. And when we do it, we go on to the next chapter. And I felt a sense of completion after that class, that I was able to present in a way they envisioned. And people were able to receive it, the information. And because of that, I got rewarded with the rune path. I was ready for the next leg. So that's a long-winded story, how I found the runes. They found me. And
they found you.
And it really took a while to land, because I hadn't had a connection with any kind of magical tradition at all, or Northern tradition. I didn't know any of the mythology. I had a vague idea of hearing the word Thor around, and maybe even Odin around, but not really.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? We know more about, the Greek, with the classic tales and so on. We tend to know more about that and less about the Northern European side, which I always find tragic. But I do so many people say, they'll say, at some point the runes dropped into my consciousness and then they sat there. And they were sort of, little opening tiny little doorways, and I didn't even know that those were the doorways. And at some point, it's what you were saying about the flower essences and the runes, and the way that it's like they're looking for a way in that will make sense to you. And they'll go, oh, and suddenly they'll start to lock into place around that pathway that makes sense. Which makes sense given that they're an alphabet, they're a form of communication, and then at some point you find that gateway and you become a channel for them back out into the world after they've been received within you, which I talk about right at the beginning of Awakening. We talk about creating the kenning hoard, and the idea that you receive the runes and that they're like a furnace inside you, and then at some point you become the creator as well. You become a participant in their evolution. Which is what I certainly feel with your work is, or even, I always learn something new. Every time I listen to what you share, I go, oh, yeah, that which I sort of knew, but I didn't know, and now you've made that so much clearer. So thank you. Oh no, it's going to be a mutual appreciation society here, isn't it? I can tell.
What I really like. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so you mentioned that you didn't necessarily have a spiritual or magical pathway as such. So can you tell me a bit more about, if you were to describe your spiritual path, what would you describe it as?
Sure. I was raised in the Catholic Church, and my parents were very involved. They would go to church every single day. It was very strong in both their upbringings, and they were both very spiritual people. But it didn't draw me. I remember really trying to make it work. I thought, well, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm not going to the right church. I would go to different churches around, but then I stopped, and it just that religion, it didn't feel right to me. I nothing against it. It's not my path for where my beliefs. Because I know I would see people around that I would in church that would be absolutely in heaven, when they were there. I saw that they were really being uplifted, but I also saw a lot of people who weren't embodying the lessons, the kindness. Like when I was a little girl, I remember being around 6 or 7, and we'd have to go to mass every single Sunday, which I hated. And there's a part of the mass where you give each other the sign of the peace, where you either hug somebody or you shake their hand, and I would see people in front of me, and they'd be like the best friends. I'm like, oh, Mrs. Jones, you're great, and I'm so happy you're in my life, blah, blah, blah. After church, everybody would gather, and because I'm a little kid and I was a very tiny kid, people wouldn't notice me. I feel like I could put like an invisibility cloak around me so people really wouldn't notice me. I would see one of those people undoubtedly talking trash about the person they shook hands with to their partner. And it happened a few times, and I was like, but you just said you like them, and now you're just being mean to them. And so there was something about that. So not to rag on that, but I couldn't make peace with that. So I was into, I started getting into astrology and metaphysical things. I really liked hearing about I would say now the formless realm, about the non-material world. And I did about I got into learning about the auras and going into metaphysical fairs and seeing what was out there. What really eventually grounded me, or really brought my practice, grounded my practice, I started working with the angels. And I found Doreen Virtue. She was a big angel person, and I didn't totally resonate with her, but I really liked the angel stuff. And eventually I stopped working with her, and I went to a metaphysical fair, and I found this local woman who was channeled the angels, and she had a book about them and all these exercises, and doing those exercises and consciously working with angels, it really helps me. It shifted my path to, I felt like I really brought down the grounded the spiritual realm in me. They're always, it's always around you, but it was more visceral. And I eventually then, and what was brought into my consciousness was the spiritual text called A Course in Miracles. And that has been huge in my life. Again, it's not for everybody, but it's been, it really resonated with me. It's for people who are I feel in their head a lot. And I've been studying that a lot for the last like over two and a half years. And before that was really into it for like the previous like 3 years. But for the last 2.5 years, I've been in a spiritual study group that started right at the beginning of the pandemic, a weekly where we would choose passages, and it really brought its principles into my days. And it really shifted how I view the world, how I view people, and like my motivations, and looking at my motivations. And when things are, it's up to me to determine how I react, to respond to things, not react. It's never about the other person. And that taking ownership of my spiritual path and my responses or reactions is very empowering. So that's Catholic Church, floating around in the nebulous new age world, angels, A Course in Miracles, and now runes. And I love so many things about the runes, but they're so physical. They're like invisible forces, but they're grounded in physicality. And for many decades, I wasn't in my body. I was like in some floaty world. I used to think that I didn't have a great memory, but I just realized I didn't have focus in this world. I didn't know I was literally not like grounded.
Yeah.
And the runes helped me ground to be here now.
Yeah, to be actually present.
Yeah.
There's so much in what you said. I'm like, I need a piece of paper so I can write down all of the things that I wanted to draw around, because it's just there's so much I think that people will resonate with. And one of the reasons that I love the Hearth Space and why I founded it is that it does welcome people who may follow a pathway which is exclusively, like a heathen pathway or a northern tradition pagan pathway. But it's also, there are so many people here who are, very eclectic in their practice, who have a pathway that resonates within, that you get that sense that I find spirit here and not there. And that's something that I recognize. I was brought up in the Christian faith, and I was very devout, but when I sat in church, I couldn't feel the same sense of the presence of the divine as I could when I sat at home with my candle lit, watching the stars. I remember on Christmas Eve, and people will go, go to the church and everything, and some people will be a bit drunk, and it was all a bit of a sort of jolly and things like that. And I would be sitting there with my candle. I was quite young at the time, going, the child of light, as I know, is actually being born at this moment. I was so like giddy with excitement. And then I'd go to church with my mum, and I'd be like, these people are not looking as ecstatic as I've been. And then I was, so you follow where you're led, where you feel that resonance, and you follow the path where it takes you. So I think that a lot of people will resonate with that. And that idea of, it can be very easy to drift out of your body into the mind. A lot of people will resonate with feeling uncomfortable in the physical world, and that it's easier to sort of understand and interpret the unseen world, whatever you want to call it, whether you want to call it imagination or mind, or that which is beyond the veils, that those places can be easier to interact in. We can feel a stronger sense of belonging and inclusion there. And the runes do support us in getting back into our bodies, I believe, as well. It's certainly something that I felt, and I would like to go into that a bit more when we talk about runic anatomy. And that sense that I felt from you as well, of there being a personal pathway, but looking for people who are trying their best to be authentic and genuine and to speak truth, but do so kindly, is I think, you know, very important as well, that we can say, you know, I might not believe or have the same experience as you, but we can have an open, you know, and a shared conversation about it, was something that I heard in what you said as well. I hope I've reflected that back and not misrepresented what you were saying in any way. But I don't know if we're jumping forward in terms of my questions, but I am really interested in this this idea of the embodied presence of the runes. And I know that, you know, one of the pieces that I teach very early on in awakening is the Stardgalder, is feeling the runes in the body, and we use the voice, and, you know, a lot of work around the sensing the energies of the runes in the body, so that they're not just symbols, they're energies that we can feel moving through us, and we look at color and the connection with the body. But your work, when I looked at it, is much more, there is I just don't have that understanding, I don't think, of the physical body in the way that you do, for one thing, and the way that you communicate is so precise. And I would love to hear a little bit more about that. You know, how did you go about deciding that you were going to do that piece of work, and that you were called to do it, and how it was going to be structured and formed?
So that was interesting. That was so in Mastery, we have a Mastery project, and I had the intention, which I'm actualizing now, to have a teaching portal on my website. And I thought, well, you know what, I'm going to really dive into the runes, and I'm going to make a video for every single rune. Every 2 weeks, I was going to put all my notes I've had together before what I did for the last like year and a half, and make videos, because it'd be great practice for putting myself out there and speaking and figuring out the all the technical logistics. So I was working on that. I was getting PowerPoints together. I didn't record anything yet. Actually, one video. And I was driving when I think it was Isa time. I was driving across the bridge, a big bridge around, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. And when I was driving across, I mentioned the bridge because it's Isa time. I got a down, backing up for a minute. And so I was, as part of this series I was putting together, I wanted it to just give an overview of what the runes are, what the symbols are, because during my work the previous year, I started seeing different pictures in the symbols, and I came up with a lot of them that they looked like to me that I didn't see in books. And I also wanted to understand how the runes could be brought into regular life, everyday, not just the magical, but I was like, where do I see these runic energies out there in like physical things? For example, like Faye, who you speak about, I don't think I'm giving anything away. You see it as photosynthesis.
Yes.
And when I see trees now, I'll see Fehu. And when I see dogs, I think they're pure Wunyo, they're pure joy. So I'm like, that's the embodiment of Wunyo. When I see like a lake, that's Lagus. So I'm seeing the energy. So that way I'm able to see how these invisible forces are manifesting in the physical world, either in physical objects or in emotions or just actions. And through this process, I was thinking, well, what part of the body does each rune represent? And I was like, there are a few out there. And I like Ansu's is the mouth, and like Iwas have been correlated with the spine, but not all of them are out there. And so when I was on this bridge, Isa Bridge, I got the download. You need to do a class on this. Put aside that. This is where Isa is in the body, and these are the messages you need to include. I was like, who just said that? I just kind of knew it. And so I was stuck in traffic. And by the time I got to my destination, I was like, oh, I'm going to do a class on the runes and the anatomy. And I'm familiar with the anatomy. I trained to be a clinical Western herbalist, and we had to learn about the body. And then I took an actual physiology anatomy class afterwards, an extensive one, because I was considering going through another program, and it was really interesting. And so I thought it'd be great to combine the runes where they are in the body. So even when I'm looking at wherever I go, the runes are there. And it's also a reminder that the spiritual realm, the formless realm, these invisible energies are part of us. Spirituality isn't out there. And I started thinking about when, before the pandemic, I would see herbal clients, and so many people were over-identified with whatever was going wrong with them, with the physical body. And they thought they were just the whatever illness that they had, that was them. You know, Jane equals arthritis. That's their identity. It's like, the physical is just such a small part of you, or of them, of everybody. And I wanted people to recognize the physical is just not really who we are. I believe who we are is we're spiritual beings having a physical experience. And we're actually part of the oneness. And focusing just on the physical is doing themselves like an injustice. Because once we leave our bodies, we're still around, not in this form, but it's just, we shift. Energy never dies, it just shifts. And I feel that's true reality, this essence, whatever we are, not the physical. This world is set up to decay. As soon as we're born, we're getting one step closer to the end of our lives. And even like you look at flowers and trees and they look beautiful, but if you look at the root system, it's pretty vicious. If they're just, they're vying to stay alive. This is a world of, not to be morbid, like a world of attack. But we don't have to like focus on that. We could focus on something bigger, what I think is truer reality as our connection, or not even our connection to spirit, are the reality that we are spirit. That's my life path, to really know that deeply. I don't fully know that, but I feel every day in which each of these practices, I'm getting closer to that and embodying it more. And so this class is really helping me on my spiritual path, because we teach what we're supposed to learn.
Yes, I think that you are right.
Yeah. Did I answer your question? I went kind of off there.
You did answer my question.
Okay.
And again, a lot to feel into with what you've shared. It reminds me, you're talking about the plant systems, and I talk a lot about like collaboration, and we have sort of competition on one side and collaboration on the other, and the two of them are always working in this sort of balance, and that is the natural way, isn't it? And that's how we evolve. And in the hearth space, today in the inner circle class that we were doing was talking about that, that we die and we are reborn. That is part of Midgard, the experience of of this realm, is that cycle of death and rebirth all of the time. Because there's I think it was Njord and Odin. They were having a conversation in my inner circle class, as they do, and they're sort of saying that is the nature of Midgard. Its evolution is much faster than in the other realms, is what they were sort of saying, and that there are rules that we then choose. We come into a realm that has particular rules and ways of being that we then work our way through, and the runes help us to interpret that, is the way that I feel, and to have a fuller experience of this life. And I felt that in your work. I was looking at the Thurisaz, your Thurisaz piece, and for me, Thurisaz is the heart. I was like, it's the heart, it's strength. And then you were looking at it, and you were looking at it in relation to the nervous system. And when you said it opened up a whole new thing for me, I was like, oh, it's so cool. So now I can go and I can work with Thurisaz, and I can expand my horizons with that rune and feel that so much more. And I love it when you're to be able to have conversations with people where they're like, yeah, I was over the Issa Bridge. And for those of you who might not be as familiar with the runes, so you were talking about the time of Issa, which is like before Yule, we have Yera at the halfway point, and then with Yule in the middle of it, and the Issa is the half month before, so sort of 2 weeks before. That's about 2 weeks before Yule. And the idea of the bridge and sort of bridge of ice that we cross, and it's this place where of danger, but of feeling our way. It's a very embodied experience. So they talk about the blind man needs to be led across the bridge. This idea of feeling into the body is so much part of Isa, as you're talking about that, and you're talking about Feyu. And I have this very distinct memory of, I'm sure it was a book by Freya Aswin that I saw, and the illustrator had created the Feyu rune out of ears of corn. They were drawn as ears of corn, and she didn't speak specifically about photosynthesis in her piece, but I just saw it and I was like, well, that's just obvious, isn't it, that it's the sun, it's the power of the sun coming down into the earth and being transformed in the Feyu energy, the life force energy, and it all came through from that. And to hear the building, the continual building of that, this huge body of knowledge, and I think all the way back to Kuma and Marby, working together in their runic yoga school before the Second World War. And what they would have thought, they were doing this work on Stad Galdra and creating this, and that they, if they could know that there were people that expanding on this and working on this, coming up to, obviously not quite there yet, but like a century later, and they are our ancestors now doing this work is magic. I wanted to, before we go on, I wanted to say hello to the people, because I know that there are people watching them live. I can see you all. Hello, everybody. And so just to say, there is time, if you have questions for Amanda, pop them in underneath the video while you're watching, and then I can ask them at the end, so that it's not just me going, oh, I've got loads of questions for Amanda, obviously, about it, not everything that she's doing. But if you do have any questions, or if anything that we're talking about resonates with your experience, do let us know, because it's nice to have a conversation with the people who are in the hearth space as well. And I will endeavour to keep an eye on your questions coming through there. So we've talked a little bit about that combination of the spiritual and the healing traditions that you've worked on. We've talked a bit about the Rune Anatomy course, and just so that people know, I will put a link for, Amanda, I'm sure you're happy for me to do that, to put a link to your website and to where they can sign up if they would like to do that course. It's really recommended. I would like to know a little bit more about your flower essences work and the plant work, and how that has linked in with your rune work.
So flower essences have been huge for me. They really, I first heard about them when I was pregnant with my son, who's going to be 15 in a couple of weeks, and used something to help with anxiety during that time. They went away and they came back to me a couple times. I didn't know what to do with them, and when I started studying herbal medicine, they were introduced as a complementary modality we can use with herbal medicine. And I started really getting into it and using them. And through my work with them, they led me back to who I really am. Who I was before was me, but I had so much, let's say, stuff in my energetic space. They helped clear it and actually hear the voice of who I really am. And I was just really passionate about them, and using them a lot, proofing them a lot. And it's been a huge healing modality for me. So I've been teaching at them at my former herb school for several years now. And I have a few classes on them because I worked with them so much and I love them so much. I figured out ways to work with them and ways to hear them. What flower essences are, or other essences, they are it's like the consciousness of plants. You could do it of the environment, of gems. It's like, I've heard essences equated to music. If you listen to a musical song, music can really inspire you, and it could shift your day, your consciousness. And when you take essences, as you do it several times a day for several weeks, each time you take it, it's like you're hearing the song of the flower, the gemstone, the environment. And so it inspires you to shift something in your life, maybe release something in your life. And what essences are, they're they're from the formless realm. They're the consciousness of Mother Nature, for lack of a better way to say it. They are from the formless realm. And so I started like working on with myself for years, and then I worked on with family and friends and clients. And when I would work herbally, I would include them in almost every single formula with the client's permission. And sometimes they weren't appropriate for the people, but I witnessed some radical shifts. I had this one client who she came for more, she had some physical stuff, but she came for more to deal with some emotional transformation. And she went from this one, she looked energetically like this little girl that was in a little ball, and it felt like a being had attached to her. And I one time I actually felt that when she was speaking, it wasn't her, it was this entity. 9 months later, it was like she was a totally different woman. She like bloomed, and because and it was just for the space that was held for her and these essences. And she just, it was just so powerful to witness. Because I would see this girl, then woman, every month, and it was such a shift each and every month. And it was, I don't feel like I'm being very I'm going off on a tangent, but they've been huge for me. So I teach about them. I love them. They work on me. They work on clients. I can kind of explain how they work physically in this world, but it's vibrational medicine. And how I equate it to runes now. When I make, for the last year, I've been making formulas. I've been putting rune symbols on it. So I've been invoking the energy of runes, and I've noticed those energies have been coming through in the formulas. And so I would I give a specific formula for something or other. And then I was like, you know what? I think Ansu's needs to come in, or Aru's is a big one, just to enhance it. And it's been very powerful. And this last year for Mastery, inspired by Suzanne, I started making rune essences. And I wasn't inspired to make flower or gem essences before. I'm like, that's what other people do, and I'm fine with that. But I just made my third rune essence, and all of them have been very powerful. At first I was like, they're not really working, are they? It's like, no, they're working. I've worked with essences enough to understand how the energy is coming through, which is a big shock to me. So like, oh my gosh, I can actually make this vibrational essence.
But it makes so much sense, doesn't it? This idea of if I love your description of the flower essences and that idea of the sort of consciousness that's beyond and likening it to music. And it brings in that idea of vibration and resonance, which also then brings in the runes too, because each of them has a vibration and a resonance. So you could see how the two would work together. And it reminds me of that, the theme that I keep coming back to, see, that you mentioned at the beginning of the ESA bridge, and that they can work as bridges between the realm of the mind, or the story world, as I often think of it now, and the body, and the formless realm, as you call it. I don't know what I would call it actually. The unseen, the harmony of the consciousness of the universe. I don't know, but I know what you mean, and I'm sure that other people will say the same. If anyone has other ways to describe or words for what we're talking about, pop them in so that we can collectively share what we call that place. And that the runes and flower essences, and I think sometimes as well, practitioners can act as bridges between those places, so that somebody who does, shows up and they look physically one way, but energetically you can feel them in a very different way. And the runes and the flower essences will work on multiple levels. In ways that we can explain, in ways that we can't always explain.
They're like translation devices. It's like, I feel we all come from the oneness. And so spirit meets us where we're at. And we have things like the runes or essences that come in, and I imagine spirituality as like a ladder. Like you could say, whatever you call God, spirit is up at the top, and we're at whatever rung. And in order to make it up to the next rung, we need a helper to translate the energy so that way we can become familiar with it.
Mm.
And so when I think of runes, I think they're the voice of spirit. Essences are the voice of spirit. It's however we can hear them. These are all different avenues. Even the Christian church, the Catholic church, there are aspects of them that really do pull you towards the oneness in ways that we can hear.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. So you might also liken it to light. You have white light, and then you have all of the different colors within the light, and it helps us to interpret that in a way that we just that the oneness of the light, we wouldn't be able to distinguish it, to work with it, to understand it. And so it's sort of broken up into different facets, is the way that I sometimes hear it as well. Michelle has asked a question. She's asked whether what we're talking about is related to Freya Aswin talking about the runes and the energy points, just that's Kundalini energy in the body. Amanda, you might have your own take on this. For me, working with Freya Aswin's work, I have used it. I've done a lot of work with chakras and energy points in the body. I did a big body of work, about 6 months of work on feeling where the different runes resonated in my body. And you'll find correspondences in various different books for runes that resonate well with different energy centers. And I've done a lot of experimentation. We weren't talking directly about that, although there might be some correlations. So, I mentioned, for example, Thurisaz for me corresponds well with the heart, which means that it would correspond well with the heart chakra as well. But the Suwelo rune works really well with all of the different chakras. So there is a whole piece of work that you can do looking at runes and seeing how they can work with the energy centers. I'm going to have to say my piece now, which Amanda is used to, but I will say it every single time, that there is no evidence that there is a correlation between the runes and the chakras. They are different systems. However, we all have bodies, and they probably work in pretty similar ways. So where one system may have found energy centers, there are likely to be energy centers working. But I wanted to open up to you, Amanda, for your thoughts on that aspect of the body and centers of energy.
I haven't, I actually haven't read any of Freya Aswin's work. It sounds strange saying that after 3 years into going the runes, but I haven't really explored which ones go and where, except for the Ansus. I see that going in the fifth chakra, because that just makes sense. It's the voice. But could you repeat the original question again? It's is there a correlation?
She was asking if that's what we were talking about. So the answer is, I suppose, the answer is no, although obviously, Amanda, you've studied with me, and my work thinking about the body, because we do work on the body and awakening and the different correlations, does draw on Freya Aswin's work, amongst others. So it's informed by, is what I would say there. I hope that answers the question, Michelle. I will go back and look and see if there are other comments in a moment. So I'm sure that we'll circle back round. These are going to be questions that keep on coming. But I wanted to ask you, bearing in mind what you said about, you mentioned Tia popping up at one point. Was it your nephew?
It was a friend's nephew.
Friend's nephew. And Odin the dog coming along. Knowing what you do now, having had such rich encounters with the Northern tradition, with the runes, but also with the deities within the Northern tradition, what has been the most surprising aspect, finding, experience that you have had within the Northern tradition?
It was interesting to read about them. When I would just think about the Northern tradition, I would just associate with Vikings, and Vikings were, I was told that they were violent, and that was very one-dimensional. So I didn't explore them. So looking at the culture, I haven't explored it as much as you have, but just reading a bit about it, it seemed like the Northern tradition people, that area, they were very independent. They lived in harsh environments. I don't know how people live up there these days when we have all houses and stuff. But I was reading that they, like in other older traditions, men and women were equal. They did different things, but one wasn't above the other. They just did different things. Some parts of their society, they just seems very advanced to me compared to where we are now. Like we might have more like physical, technical, like computer technology, and we have a different consciousness because it's a different time, but there is an equality there that I don't really feel is necessarily embodied today. And I hearing the stories about Odin, I guess it was you could correct this, but it sounded like it was a tradition when you traveled, you had to extend your home to people, feed them.
Yes.
It was like a courtesy, and it was such a big, that surprised me in such a harsh landscape that you would just let strangers in and feed them. And it made me think in this current culture that we don't have that basic humanness. It's like the more the world gets disconnected from nature, it's like we forget about our connection to others. So I guess what surprised me the most was that how human they were in like a kind way, an equal kind way. They had the rituals, how maybe it was more refreshing than surprise, but just learning about the culture was very surprising to me because I was just, well, Vikings equal this. It's like, well, they did that. They were in war, but so many cultures were in war. That was just the consciousness at the time, but that doesn't necessarily make them bad. Growing in the Catholic Church, it's like, well, they did this, therefore they're bad, they're going to hell. And it's not that black and white. It's not black and white at all.
Yeah.
So it's very refreshing to hear how on some areas that I feel that their humanity was more advanced, their connection to nature was more advanced. And as with many ancient civilizations, I feel there are a lot of parts of our current times that were just backwards. But there are a lot of great parts too.
Yeah. No, I think I would agree with so much of that. I know that obviously there was huge inequalities in some aspects of their societies. Still slavery was a thing, but on the other hand, as you say, status was very different between women and men, and there was a more, we sort of think about the LGBTQI community now as if it's like a new thing, but actually no, we know in the ancient cultures were much more gender fluid in many ways, and we don't know how much of that the like male female polarity was imposed later. I suspect that there was a lot more gender fluidity going on there too, and that people were, if you're going off in your ships for years at a time, somebody's at home and they're in charge. So women in many cases were in charge of the hearth and the home and the land, and men, not always men, but were out doing other stuff. So it's a very different idea of partnership, and we see that with Frigg and Odin and him going out. So it's very true there that again, going back to the theme we were talking about of collaboration and competition, it was different. So very intense competition with your enemies, but much more intense collaboration as well. And those rules around hospitality, meaning that people could travel across the lands bringing news and commerce and new medical knowledge, new understanding of terrains, was so precious that the rules of hospitality worked for everybody, because it meant there was safe transit, but it also meant the passing on of knowledge and resource, and the exchange of language and ideas, and the bonding of communities who needed those bonds to forge peace together, through marriage. All of those things relied on hospitality. So that was a really nice. I like that question. I'm going to remember that question for future interviews. It was a good question. The next question you're not going to like as much, because if anyone asked me this question, I'd be really annoyed. So, but it's I'm going to ask it anyway, which is your favorite rune?
I'm going to say two. The one I'm really called back to a lot is Aruz. I love the idea of this, learning about the oryx. Something about that, I'd never heard about it before, this rune. I just fell in love with this creature, and it's such a physical rune and being in your body. And that's a big lesson of mine, is to be in my body. So I really appreciate the force behind it and the lessons it teaches me, like that. And then a second one is Tewaz. Yeah, there's that rune has come in and helped me make some decisions.
I can really feel that. Yeah, when you're talking about the idea of equality, there's so much truth and integrity in the Tewaz rune, isn't there?
Yeah.
See, obviously, basically, you could say any rune, and I'd be like this. Yeah, that's the best.
Yeah.
Every time, but very well done. I'm glad. I'm going to give you two because it's a really hard question, but I think it's true as well. I've definitely noticed in Awakening that a lot of people find Urus in particular a really powerful rune the first time round as they go through the Futhark. There is so much requirement, I think, today for our understanding of sustainability and our relationship with nature and healing and wholeness that rune brings to us. You know, it's such a powerful rune, and I think so needed.
Yeah. And also, I think what it calls to me is being a leader in my life, or it tells you to be a leader in your life and to make decisions. And that's also empowering on an energetic level to me. Yeah, and that actually goes very nicely into our, Michelle's question. So she's got another question. Marie has said, I love the idea of rune essences. Your work is inspiring. So I share that. So Michelle has asked that she's curious to how you express your understanding physically or embody the runes in day-to-day life. She says, then working with the chakras and runes seems less physical than what you're talking about. So yeah, I wanted to open that up again because maybe I just misinterpreted the question that she was asking. So she's just asked that question. So she's saying, working physically and embodying the runes in day-to-day life, how does that work for you? What might that look like? So a couple of things. What I do when I go out now, I look for where I see the runic energies out there. And when I see them out there, I feel like I know I'm having a conversation with spirit, with the formless realm. And so it's not a physical thing that I work with there, but looking at the physical symbols, I'm like, oh, that's a this act. This is that essence. It's bringing spirituality closer to me in my day-to-day life. Sometimes what I will do, I notice Urus a lot when I exercise. When I like if I have to hold yoga poses, and I'm like, oh, this is a ruse. I don't love this, but I'm like, I'm calling forth the energy of that rune to help stabilize me. Or when I cook, I'm like, Kinaz is here because the fire transforms food. And so it's like I call forth Kinaz. So it's a chance to certain acts will call forth the runes, their energies. Because I really do believe we're more energetic than physical. So when I'm engaging with these voices, I'm really touching true reality.
Yeah.
And hopefully that answered your question.
I think it's a very expansive question, isn't it? That could probably be explored in so many ways. You know, that idea of like, I always think about like rune hunting, you know, out in nature for myself. I would look for the runes and then they would speak to me in that way. And you mentioned seeing a body of water, and now you feel the energy of Lagus when you look at them. And you know, we can do that intentionally with the runes. You know, if I think about the Rado rune, I have essences that I've made, not for all of the runes, but for some of them. Rado is one, and I like to trace it on the soles of my feet so that I can walk because it's the rune of rhythm, and I get my drum out and I drum because it's the rune again of rhythm and that drawing in of the drum and the dance. And I know that again in Mastery we have a number of people who are working to either work with the Stad Galdra to create the rune shaped with their bodies, or they're working more intuitively through intuitive movement and feeling how the different runes will make you move in different ways. I was really surprised when I just first worked with the Suelo rune, the way that it makes your hips move. I could do that all day. You know, so there are so many ways once you know the visuals and the mysteries and the concepts behind a rune, that you can then start to bring that embodied process in and explore the rune through your body as well as through your mind.
I want to add one more thing. I mentioned before, when I see dogs, I see Wunyo. And so when I see a dog and I'm like, oh, that dog is pure joy, because I see these dogs looking at their partners, owners, whatever you want to call companions, just saying, I love you, I love you. And when I see dogs, it's a reminder to me to get centered and focus on joy. So that physical symbol of Wunyo is calling me back to what I feel is my true self, which is a joyful being of light.
Oh.
So that's something I do a lot, because my neighborhood, there are dogs all over the place.
I love that. I'm gonna have to make more friends with dogs. I'm a bit of a cat person. I have 4 cats, so
yeah.
But I will do this now. I will explore the mysteries of Wunyo through the mysteries of the dog. I think it sounds like a lovely thing to do. And Michelle says that that's really helpful, so I'm really glad. Let me have a look and see what my question board tells me at this point. I'm just clicking back between people and checking who has other questions, but we're doing okay. So I've got one more question which was posted before the group, which is from Diane. So people will know, because Diane has posted that she has had some very bad news. She's been working walking alongside cancer for a while now, and she just had very bad news that's terminal. So she's asked a question which is about what can be done, how can the runes help and partner in terms of reaching out for hope, and any specific advice that Amanda might give. And I think it's important, but obviously we're talking about a specific situation rather than sort of generally finding a path. Just say, I know that Amanda, you say in your website that it's not a medical, it's not there for medical advice, it's there for information and guidance. So I just wanted to put that caveat on, but obviously the runes do offer themselves there to help us to step into wholeness. So is there anything that you would like to share or offer?
Well, it's everybody's path is so different. And what I not walking with cancer, but in general, what I do is it's part of my path to give my day to spirit, because I feel there could be 10 people out there giving 10 things that are great advice for them, but not necessarily for me. And the answers are going to come from my higher self, my connection to spirit, whatever is appropriate for me. I know this one woman, she was having a lot of digestive issues and brain fog, and she was eating healthy according to her, and exercising, and she's a registered nurse, and she discovered that she couldn't handle histamine producing food, so she was eating bananas and beans and avocados, and those are healthy for lots of people, but not for her. So people were like, well, just eat this and this, and they were toxic for her. So I don't know your situation, but I would give it to spirit. We all have guidance. For the runes, algiz, you reach up and just invoke algiz, maybe Sawillow, the rune of hope, and dagas, the sun runes. I know there are stories out there with people I don't know what stages they were at, but they have overcome different diseases. I think if it was their path, I don't know what our orlog is. I don't have specific advice other than, like, for hope, there's some essences out there that can help with hope. There's one that I like is borage, Borage. It said it gives you courage, but I find it gives you the courage to be hopeful. That's just in general. Hopefully that helps. I just give things to spirit, because I feel like spirit knows. It's like the sage on the mountain, and whatever runes would help you connect with that inner self, that inner guidance. It won't steer you wrong.
Yeah.
Whatever the outcome, your spirit will make the path peaceful.
And I think that, and Diane put it herself, didn't you? And Diane, when you said that it's that the word hope was what came first in terms of your instinct as to what you needed, what was important at this time. So that advice of reaching out to spirit, and I know there are so many people in our community who are there and offering support. And sometimes when we can't hold it for ourselves, it's about asking those around us to hold that for you. And I know that people are doing that. I would also just say, I did, because I know, Diane, you love the runes so much. I know this is the case for, so many people, whatever, if you're on a healing path of any sort, I found your work on looking at the different runes and how they connect with the body and being able to play with that in that sense and go, which rune now, and it was really, really helpful. I loved it. So yeah, if you are interested in how to work with different aspects of the body and connect to your body through the runes, I would definitely recommend going and looking at Amanda's work on that. And I think recognizing that it is, although the rune system is an old, it's a very ancient system, and we know that it was used for healing purposes. Now we know that from the tales. We just don't know exactly how that was done. And we have evolved, as people. I'm not saying we've evolved to be better than our ancestors, which we've talked about this, haven't we? That we're just different, so that the practices that are available to us are different to what our ancestors would do. Maybe we're not going to carve the runes on a piece of bone and stick it under somebody's bed necessarily. We might call them in, through our bodies and channel them through our bodies and do different ways of working with them. And in that sense, it's still quite it's still open. It's still an open system. There's still so much room to explore and grow and develop within that. So if somebody did want to come and they wanted to come and work with you either on the rune side, or they're interested in you're working with the flower essences or plants, how do they go about doing that?
So my website is theplantportal.com. I started it when I was in herbal school, and originally I thought I was going to practice Western herbalism, but Spirit had something else in mind. I have the download. I'm supposed to focus on teaching, not necessarily in big classes or anything, but I do have a number of classes. I have 3 live ones right now, and 2 more that will be out by the end of the year about communication. So you could do online classes with me, they're all recorded. I do flower essence consultations. I am in the United States, and it could be challenging to work internationally because of the cost of getting the formulas there, but you can learn about flower essences. Flower essences are Edward Bach, or I think the UK calls him Edward Bach. He devised a system, and he wanted it to be, wanted them to be the medicine of the people. You can make essences yourself. You can use them yourself. So you don't necessarily have to work with a practitioner, but it's nice if you, and there are a lot of resources out there about how to work with them, what they are. But I condense it on my website based on my experience.
Yeah.
So I do work with people with flower essences, generally in the United States, though, only because of the shipping costs could be crazy horrible.
Having said that, I have personally experienced where I've said to Amanda, just, this is happening, this thing, and I've just got this amazing email back saying blah 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 blah, and I was like, whoa. So the quality of the information and that you provide, and I have worked with other people, who have given, with essences and plants and tinctures and all sorts of things, but the way that you supported me in making choices about what I wanted to do and understanding the different choices that I could make is really, it was first rate. So yeah, even if it's online, Amanda she is your woman, I think, personally. Let me see if we've got any other questions before we close. We've got some new comments coming on. I think that's lovely. So no, that's fine. Michelle is saying that is good or wonderful. So I think we have finished on our questions. Thank you so much, Amanda, for joining me in this conversation, deepening into what's possible with our rune work, with an understanding of how we can forge our own personal pathway. With that, we've discussed so many really juicy topics around that sort of interface between the mind and the body and the spirit, and the physical reality and the reality beyond that, and the way in which different mediums or different modalities like the runes or like the flower essence, how they can operate and how they operate independently, but then what they can do when we can combine when then they come together. So thank you so much. It has been a delight talking to you. So this interview will stay in the Hearth space, and I will also be putting it onto the YouTube channel. And I will make sure that we've got the links there to your website on both of them.
Thank you, Maggie. And thank you to everybody who came and listened. I personally love hearing about other people's journeys. And because when people are authentic, there's so many authentic people in this community. I've loved the other interviews you did because people are real. And that's something I really like about the people you like magnetize to you. It's very refreshing. Because there's a lot of authenticity out there, not to put anybody down, but it's so refreshing to be around real humans being human.
Hey, so I appreciate all the real humans out there.
Yeah.
We love you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Amanda.
Thank
we
you.
will finish the live. Bye everybody. Have a great night or a great day, depending on what time it is for you.